Hello everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Wehry Weekly History and Entertainment News. With the rise of the Delta variant, new rules and regulations are in place. This week, I'll be continuing the updates on Massachusetts, plus walking tours and several different art exhibits and museums. Plus, I'll be giving a history on how the creation of baseball may or may not have gone through Pittsfield. First, it's time for this week's trivia question. This week's question is, how many baseball teams have called Wahconah Park home? Now, for this week's local entertainment headlines. First, an update on the state of Massachusetts. So far, there have been no drastic changes from last week's episode. The state is still requesting that people wear masks indoors, regardless of vaccination status. Also, schools are requiring masks for students and staff. Some arts and entertainment venues are requiring patrons to bring vaccination cards if you have been vaccinated and negative COVID tests for the non-vaccinated prior to entry, but others are not. Check venue websites for more information. Now, for a fascinating new exhibit at the Berkshire Museum about an under-discussed part of our history. The museum is hosting an art exhibit called History of the Mahee-Con-ne-oc, People of the Waters Who Are Never Still. The Mahee-Con-ne-oc is the original name of the Mohican tribe, a Native American tribe based out of Stockbridge, who were forced out of their land when America was being settled. Today, less than 1,000 Mohican Indians live in Stockbridge. In an interview with the Berkshire Eagle, Heather Bruegel, the exhibit curator and director of the cultural affairs for the Stockbridge Mohican community, said, quote, "The purpose of this exhibition is to bring awareness to a history that is oftentimes overlooked or talked about in depth. The Stockbridge Mohican people call the Berkshires home and have for centuries. It is so great to be able to bring this history to life and show what vibrant and unique communities we have," end quote. The exhibit uses objects from the tribe's collection and on loan from partner institutions, as well as historical profiles and timelines, photographs of current events, and contemporary oral histories to tell the story of the Stockbridge Mohican community. The major theme of the museum is flowing water, never standing still, always changing. The story of the tribe is told through cardinal directions of the compass, acknowledging the Stockbridge Mohican clans associated with those regions, as well as the natural and cultural histories connected with those points. Mahee-Con-ne-oc, People of the Waters That Are Never Still, is currently on display from now until January 9th, 2022. Museum hours are currently 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Mondays through Saturdays, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sundays. To purchase tickets, please call 413-443-7171 or visit their website at berkshiremuseum.org. Masks are required at all times for all visitors ages 2 and up, regardless of vaccination status. Our next story is of particular interest for those interested in art
from long ago. The Ventfort Hall Mansion and Gilded Age Museum in Lenox will be hosting a talk titled The Gibson Girl, a cultural Gilded Age icon.
The Gilded Age was an era in American time that represented one of the most drastic periods of economic growth. One of the most famous American painters during that time was Charles Dana Gibson. He was best known for his paintings of the Gibson Girl, an iconic representation of what was considered to be the common Euro-American woman at the turn of the 20th century. She was portrayed as a tall, independent, strong woman who, for better or worse, taught an entire generation of women how to act and dress. The model of the Gibson Girl was Gibson's own wife and muse, Irene. This talk coincides with the Gibson art exhibit currently on display at the museum, which will be on display until October. The Gibson Girl, a Gilded Age icon talk, will be held on Saturday, September 25th. The talk will start at approximately 3:30 p.m. Ventfort Hall Program Committee member Tom Hayes, who is a well-known expert on the Gilded Age, will be hosting the event. Ticket reservations are highly recommended for this event, as they are extremely limited. To do so, please call 413-637-3206. Masks are required for all visitors, regardless if you have gotten the vaccine or not. The Ventfort Hall Mansion and Gilded Age Museum is located on 104 Walker Street in Lenox.
We now continue our art talks with the much anticipated reopening of a local art museum. The Williams College Museum of Art is finally open after being closed for over a year due to the pandemic. The reason it took longer to reopen than other art museums was because of its association with Williams College. It didn't want outsiders interfering with the school year. They have several exhibitions at hand, some of which were going on even before the pandemic hit, and others which came about as a result of the pandemic.
One is called Unstable Connections. This is the exhibition work of the 2021-2022 studio art majors for Williams College. This shows the students' hard work over the past 4 years, and even includes the pieces that they created during this pandemic. There are a total of 12 artists on display, and all of the works feature different themes. Another exhibit being displayed is the Agent for Creative Action series. The fine and performing arts were some of the hardest hit areas of the pandemic. So, Williams students formed an on-campus group called Agent for Creative Action to help save the arts. During the fall 2020 semester, the students created a playlist connecting some of their favorite songs with work from the Williams College Museum of Art's collection. Then they worked on interviewing museum staff to display these public works of art and create a scavenger hunt for patrons to visit once they could return to the museum. Now patrons can finally see the students' work. This is a great way to see art. The two exhibits are only a partial listing of the many different events going on at the Williams College Museum of Art. If you are curious about the rest, you can visit artmuseum.williams.edu for further information. Hours for the museum vary depending on the semester. For the fall 2021 semester, it is open Wednesdays through Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and on Mondays and Tuesdays by appointment only. Masks are required at all times, regardless of vaccination status. Admission to the museum is free for all ages.
On last week's episode, I discussed an interesting series of walks one could take to Lenox to view their history. The Upper Housatonic Valley National Heritage Area, which includes cities and towns such as Pittsfield, Dalton, Lenox, Lee, Stockbridge, and Great Barrington, will be offering similar walks as well.
According to their website, their job is to, quote, illuminate the diverse, rich identity of the Upper Hoosic River Valley region and to preserve and promote its historical, cultural, and natural resources, end quote. The Heritage Area interprets and promotes the historical, cultural, and scenic features of the Upper Hoosic Valley region in western Massachusetts. It was designated by Congress in 2006 to heighten appreciation of the region. More than 80 tours will be given, and they include historic estate gardens and town districts, behind-the-scenes cultural tours, industrial site ruins, Native American and African American history walks, a paddling trip on the Housatonic River, a bike tour, and more. Tours will be running on Saturdays and Sundays in September. These tours are free to the public and will begin going on at various times. If you have any questions about the walks, you can visit the website housatonicheritage.org, click on Events, then Heritage Walks. You can also email the company at the link shown here. Because it is an outdoor event, masks are not 100% required, although they are recommended.
It's now time for this week's movie portion of WWHEN. On this week's episode, I'm going to be reviewing the dramatic action movie, Those Who Wish Me Dead. This movie came to theaters and HBO Max simultaneously, and is now available on demand.
The film tells the story of Hannah Faber, a smoke jumper, or a specifically trained firefighter who provides information on wildfires. She is struggling to cope with the fact that she could not save 3 young campers from a previous fire. In a separate plotline, Owen Casserly, a forensics accountant, is on the run with his son Connor from a pair of assassins who killed his boss. Connor becomes separated from his father and soon meets up with Hannah. The two then must escape the assassins, and Hannah must overcome her fears and failures. So what did I think of this movie? I thought it was a great action film with great characterizations. The characters feel very real, and the bond between Hannah and Connor is one of the movie's stronger points. Those Who Wish Me Dead also has some neat set pieces. The forest fire scenes are some of the strongest. Those Who Wish Me Dead also builds very slowly, which works. At first, we don't know why Hannah and Connor's stories are related, but when the two merge, it improves the film dramatically. Performances are solid throughout too. Angelina Jolie is great as the strong-headed and powerful Hannah. However, despite the well-known presence of actors such as Jolie, Nicholas Hoult, and John Bernthal, the film's best performance actually comes from Medina Sanghorn, making her film debut. She plays Allison, a deputy sheriff's wife who happens to be pregnant. When the assassins confront her, Allison makes some incredibly level-headed decisions and manages to capture the audience's attention. For someone who had never acted in a film before, Medina Sanghorn completely steals it, which is hard to do when Angelina Jolie is in it. The only issue with this movie is plot. By the end of the movie, you're still not sure about some of the characters' motivations. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the worst and 10 being the best, I give Those Who Wish Me Dead a 9. It has great action scenes, characters you can relate to, and amazing performances.
It's now time for this week's history portion of WWHEN. This week we are going to be discussing the history of baseball in Pittsfield. But before we do that, it's important to understand the history of baseball as a whole. The sport has some very mysterious and confusing origins. For years, it was believed that Abner Doubleday, a future Civil War general, created the game in 1839 in Cooperstown, New York. This small town is currently the home of the Baseball Hall of Fame. Doubleday's story was sponsored by his friend, baseball executive Albert Spalding, whose name adorns a popular sporting goods company for many years. However, journalist Henry Chadwick wrote in his newspaper that baseball simply evolved from other bat and ball sports, such as cricket or the Irish sport rounders. In addition, there is no proof that Abner Doubleday even visited Cooperstown. And findings of his diaries never mention the word baseball. Ironically, Albert Spalding and Henry Chadwick are both members of the Hall of Fame, while Abner Doubleday is not. So where does Pittsfield's role come into play? Baseball's creation was further complicated by a discovery in Pittsfield in 2004. On May 11, 2004, baseball historian John Thorne discovered a document in the Berkshire Museum that he said was the earliest known written reference to baseball being played in North America. A Pittsfield bylaw issued on September 5, 1791, as shown here, stated, quote, "For the preservation of the windows in the new meeting house, no person or inhabitant of said town shall be permitted to play at any game called wicket, cricket, baseball, batball, football, cat, fives, or any other game or game with balls within the distance of 80 yards from said meeting house," end quote. Baseball historians had a field day with this news. Could there have possibly been a mistake with baseball's creation? In a press release during the original announcement, Thorne emphasized what his findings meant. Quote, "It's the birthplace until further notice. Let's put it that way. Do we believe that baseball was really played here first? No. The way I like to put it is, baseball is like a field of dandelions. It was growing up everywhere in the late 18th century anyway. Looking back from the vantage point of 200 years, it's important to identify the first dandelion," end quote. In other words, the sport of baseball was appearing in several places throughout the country during the late 18th century. Nobody had put the words base and ball next to each other until Pittsfield's documents. This does not mean that the first game was held in Pittsfield. Rather, the first written proof of baseball was. Plus, the rules of baseball were not established until later. In any case, Pittsfield expanded their history of baseball with this. We continue our baseball history with Wehkona Park. Wehkona Park is one of the most famous stadiums for minor, collegiate, and independent baseball, and has been the feature of several books and articles. While baseball has been played at 105 Wehkona Street since 1892, the actual stadium was not built until 1919. Famed local architect Joseph MacArthur Vance helped construct the park. He also built the original Colonial Theater, Springside Park, and Wehry Theater, among other Berkshire institutions. The stadium was built with a wooden grandstand, which is still in place today. It is one of the last remaining stadiums to have one, as most baseball parks have gone with metal stadium seating. It's also been the home to some very special baseball games. For instance, on May 3rd, 2009, alumni from Williams College and Amherst College played a baseball game under 1859 rules. This was to commemorate the 150th anniversary of college baseball, while also highlighting the document that I discussed earlier. The event's popularity was helped in no small part due to Amherst graduate, former Red Sox owner, and Dalton native Dan Duquette, who helped organize the event. Wehkona Park also brings us the answer to this week's trivia question. As a reminder, this week's question was, how many baseball teams have called Wehkona Park home? The answer is 17. The first team to play at Wehkona Park were the Pittsfield Electrics, who only played there for 2 years. After 5 years of no teams due to World War I, the Pittsfield Hillies played there from 1919 to 1930. The combination of the Great Depression and World War II saw another long pause. It wasn't until 1941 when another team called the Electrics played there. They played there for 10 years and had 3 names: Electrics, Indians, and Phillies. Another long break happened between 1951 and 1965. Afterwards, Pittsfield joined the Eastern League. Their teams had 5 versions: Pittsfield Red Sox, Pittsfield Senators, Pittsfield Rangers, the Berkshire Brewers, and the Pittsfield Cubs. Then, in 1989, they had their longest-running team in the Pittsfield Mets of the New York Penn League from 1989 to 2000, before being renamed the Astros for their final season in 2001. This marked the last minor league affiliated team. Ever since then, Pittsfield teams have either been Summer League or Independent League. It started with the Berkshire Black Bears beginning in 2002, followed by the Pittsfield Dukes, and briefly, the American Defenders. For 2 years, the Pittsfield Colonials played in Wehkona Park for the Canadian American League. Finally, the Pittsfield Suns are the most recent version. They have played in the Futures League since 2012. That ends this week's episode of Wehry Weekly History and Entertainment News. If you would like to watch this or any other WWHEN episode again, you can visit PCTV, CTSB TV, and NBCTC's websites shown here. Also, if you would like to see the episodes in HD quality, make sure to check out my YouTube page at RT Wehry. Thank you.